Hello, my name is Chris, and this is a tutorial using PlayMaker to create a vertical shooter game. And in this tutorial, I was going to start, so in the last one we made it so the ship can die and blow up and all that stuff. And in this one I was going to make it so that actually did something, like subtracting from an integer that represented the total number of lives that you had. But I think before we do that, we need to get the full flow of the game working with all of the different screens. So usually when you start a game, it comes in and it goes to a start screen. And from there you can either start the game or exit the game. And then once you start the game, it will go to this screen here where you're actually playing it. And then from there, if you die, it goes to a game over screen and then back to the start screen. So I think before we put the lives in and create the game over screen, we just need everything in there so that we can make it all work together. So first thing I'm going to do is create a new scene. So I had some excess scenes in here and I've deleted them all, and now I just have the one game scene just so I don't get confused over what's what. And we're going to create a new one. So we'll go File, New Scene. Actually, before I do that, I'm just going to copy this canvas just to make things a little easier. So you can copy objects that are in your hierarchy from one scene to another. So let's go New Scene. So we just have a completely blank scene here. And actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and save this. So we'll save this scene as, I'll put it in my scenes folder here. And instead of game scene, we'll call it start scene. And let's go back to the game scene here. I'm going to copy the main camera and the canvas. So copy and paste. I'm going to get rid of the main camera that the scene comes with. So in the canvas, I don't want there to be a score, but we do want some kind of text there. Let me move this camera up just to get out of the way. So instead of score text, we're going to have title. And in there we'll just say tutorial vertical shooter. I guess PlayMaker. There we go. Whoops. Okay, and you can see here it's not, the actual box size of the text isn't large enough to handle that. Let me get rid of score number because we're not going to need that. So let's go to the scene view, and I'm just going to enlarge that. We're going to make it really big because we're going to actually make the text pretty big here. So let's center the text on the screen and give it a really big font size. And we're going to align it to the center. So now that text is going to be right in the center of the screen. There we go. Change the color. Maybe blue's better. All right, good enough. Okay, maybe white. Let's just leave it white. Okay, so we got that. And we need to have some interface to tell you what to do at this scene. So let's go ahead and create a couple things that are just going to tell you what to do. So we're going to copy this. I'm going to hit Control D on the title text. And we'll have one called Start. And it's just going to say start : press A. Let's move that down. And let's make the font a little bit smaller so it doesn't compete with the title. So start, press A, and then we'll duplicate that. We'll call this exit, and the text for that will be exit, press B. And this will let you exit the game once we add some logic to it. Oops, didn't mean to mess with the Z position there. Okay, and let's move all these down a little bit, more central to the screen. All right, Actually, I kind of like the title higher. Looks pretty good. It's pretty boring though, so let's add in the ship model and an enemy model to the scene. And what we'll do is we will move these towards the camera a bit just to make it look better. So I'm going to move this game scene out so I can actually see it a little bit while I'm working on it here. So we're going to move this towards the camera. So I should move both of them at the same time. Move them straight up, just so they're a little bigger on screen. And we'll move the ship to one side and the enemy to the other. And I'm just going to rotate it a little bit. You can kind of see what I'm doing here in the camera view. I guess let's rotate them both. Let's see how that looks. Pull my game view back over. All right, that looks fine. Okay, so here's our start scene, and it just needs a little bit of logic. So we're gonna have, when you press A, we're gonna load the level, the game level, and when you press B, it's gonna exit the game. So we're just gonna create a new object, an empty one. We'll call this title screen input, just so we know what it is. And we're going to add an FSM to that. So in here, it's just going to look for two things, two different inputs. So get button down, and we're going to have two of these. One's going to look for fire 1, which in Unity, that is just default assigned to the A button on the controller. And one's going to look for fire 2, which in Unity is assigned to the B button on the controller. So we're going to have a new event here. We'll call one start. So if you hit A, it's going to go to start, and one for exit. I'll click on both of these and it'll add the transitions over here. So we're going to add a state here and another state. We'll call one start and one exit. And we'll connect them. So start is going to go load level. And this is just an action that's built into PlayMaker. And you can pick the level name. And so the level name is going to be the name of the scene. So I'm just going to copy that name and put that in here. And then we'll do the same thing for exit. And exit, actually no, we're going to do something different for exit. I believe it's called, let me see if I can think of the name here. Oh, there it is, application quit. All right. So if you press that, it's just going to exit the application altogether, and that'll just close the game. I'm pretty sure. I should have done a test run, but I didn't, so we'll just try this out. Okay, so one thing you need to do before these will work is you need to add them to the build so the build knows what's going on here. So we're going to add this scene. Let's save it first. And we'll go to build settings up here under file. And you see there's no scenes in the build. So we're going to click on this add open scene button. And you can see here, it added the start scene. All right, so that's all we need to do. I don't think you need to save anything there. If we go back to build settings, you can see it automatically saved that. All right. So now let's load the game scene. And we're going to add this as well. So we'll go File, Build Settings, Add Open Scene. And you can see it added it here. Now, when you start the game, it's going to load the first one that it finds here. So it's going to load that start scene. So we can close that. Now let's open the start scene back up and let's see if this works. So we'll hit play. And you can see it's just sitting here. And if you just built the game and opened it up, it would just start right here. So let's hit A, and you can see it loaded the game. Now the lighting looks a little strange. I'm not sure why. See if I stop and I just load that scene. The lighting looks fine. I'm not sure. That might just be a bug. We'll just keep going with it for now. Okay, so that's all working. So now we're going to need a game over screen. So let's go to our start scene here. And we're going to duplicate this. You can just duplicate it like anything else. So the scene is in the project view. I've made a scenes folder, but you can put it wherever you want. But I'm just going to hit Control D on that. And instead of being start scene 1, it's going to be game over scene. And we're going to get rid of the ship models. And on the canvas, we don't need start and exit. And the title is just going to say game over. Okay, we'll just put that in the middle of the screen. And all this is going to do is, this is going to be completely automatic, so we don't want any input here. So I'm going to delete the input object I had. And we'll create one that just says game over logic. We're going to add a FSM to this, and all this is going to do is wait. I'm not sure what the proper time is, maybe 2 seconds. And then it's going to finish. We'll call that wait. And then once it's finished, it's just going to load the start scene. So we need the load level action in there, and we need the level name. So we're going to go over here and copy the name from the start scene. I'll just do a Control C on the text. And I'm going to paste it in there for the load level. And that should do it. So last thing we need to do is add this game over screen to the build so it actually knows it exists. So go to build settings, add open scene. Not sure why it didn't work. Maybe I need to save it first. Oh, it's still called start scene. Oh, I might have messed this up. Let me see. Let's save that. Okay. Yeah, I messed it up. Okay. So the start scene is a game over and vice versa. So we're just going to have to rename these. So start scene, and I guess I can't do the name, so I'll just add a character in there. Very confusing. All right. All right, there we go. So hopefully this will work. So let's go back to our game over screen. So I just kind of messed up with the naming. But let's go to build settings. We'll add this scene. Oh, I see. When I renamed it, it renamed it here. Okay, so this scene, it already thinks is in there. Let's go to the start scene. We'll add this one. There we go. And I'm just going to move this up to the top. So the start scene is the first one that comes in. Put the game over scene at the bottom there. Okay, so it goes to the start scene, shooter, game scene, and game over scene. Okay. I believe that is correct. Let's go to game over, game screen. All right, let's just save everything here. Sorry about the confusion there. I just kind of messed up with the names a little bit. So now one last thing we need to do is add lives. And once you run out of lives, that's what's going to send you over to the game over scene. So I'm going to go to my canvas here in the game scene, and I'm going to copy score text and score number. So I'm just going to hit Control D on that. And we'll call this lives number. And lives text. And we're just going to move these over. So let's go to, well, actually, before I do that, let me put the proper text in here. Lives number, we'll just leave that at 0. Lives text, we'll change that to lives colon. I'm going to go to the scene view so I can see these and move them. And we'll just move that over to the bottom right hand corner. And you can see them here. Okay, so now this lives text needs to be hooked up, or lives number needs to be hooked up to the right thing. We'll drag that under there. Okay, so this FSM is copied over from the score one, the score number. So we still need to convert it into string, but we need a new integer. So we're going to go to the global variables tab under variables here, and we're going to create a new integer. There we go. So I'm going to go to int and new variable lives int. So we just created a new global integer there. So I can close that now. Let's go back to the state. And the int variable is score int. We want that to be lives int. And the string variable says score string, so we should probably rename that just so it's not confusing. So I'm just going to click on the local variable here and change the name to live string. Okay, and this is already set up. So one thing we need to do is we need to tell it when to change that global variable. So what we're going to do is go back to the start scene. I'm going to save this. Go back to the start scene. And this one, this is the only state that we have in here that has any logic. As soon as it loads this, which is going to be as soon as it loads this start scene, I'm going to reset that lives variable. So we're going to say set int. We're going to do set int value. We'll just drag that to the top here. Now this is the same state that is checking your button inputs, and it's okay to do this. You can just set, since this is the only one we have in here, we're just going to put it in here. And the int variable we want to set is lives int, and we'll start with 3 lives. So now it's just going to set that lives int every time you make it back to this screen to 3. All right, so let's save that. Go back to our game scene. And then now we need a way to modify that lives int. So we're going to go to the player, and here is the logic we have for deaths. And all we need to do is go to this death one here, and this death one is going to basically subtract from that lives int every time you die. So we're going to do add int. We're going to get an int add in here. So the int variable we're going to edit is lives int, and to add we're going to put -1. So every time it gets to this death state, it's going to subtract 1 from that. Alright, so that should work. Let me save that, and let's just test that out real quick. It's not actually going to do anything yet, but we're just testing it. So in order to get this lives int to update, we're going to go to the start screen, and we're going to hit play. And let's hit A to start. And you see my lives in the bottom right hand corner here. It says 3. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with the lighting. But I'll just assume once we make a build it'll work correctly. Sometimes that happens. So if I die, let's see if it subtracts from there. So it did. So you can see my lives int went to 2. It went to 1. And now it's at 0. And so what I want to do is I guess once you get to 0, that's fine. We'll just, we won't make it send you to the game over screen until you get to -1 lives, essentially. That way, even when you have 0 lives left, you don't feel cheated, you know, you feel like you're on your last life. Okay, so let's go back to the game scene. And we need something in here that puts you to the game over level. So let's create a empty game object. I'll just put it 0 here. And let's call this game over logic. And all this is going to do is we're going to add an FSM, and it's just going to watch that lives int number. So we're going to do an int compare. So this is going to allow us to compare the lives integer to another number. Oops. So lives int, and we're going to compare that to 0. Well, you can do it different ways, because you can either do equal, less than, or greater than. If we do equal, we can compare it to -1. If we do less than, we can compare it to 0. So let's just leave it at 0. And we need to check it every frame. And if it's less than 0, which it will be once it gets to -1, we're going to finish. So we'll add a finish transition, and we'll go to less than, finished. And all this is going to do is it's going to load the game over level. All right, I just have to put the name in. It would be nice if we could drag it in there. So I'm just going to copy that name with Control-C, go back to my game over logic object, and paste that in. All right, so let's save this. So if I just start this scene by itself, my lives will be at 0 because I didn't set them to 3. So if I die once, it should send me the game over. All right, there we go. And then the game over scene waited. It did its thing. It waited for a second, 2 seconds or whatever. And then it sent me back to this start scene. So we'll hit A. And there you go. Yeah, and for some reason, the lighting is just, it's not updating correctly. But now we have the total flow of the game. You come in, you can shoot, you can get score, and your lives get lost when you hit things. You go to game over, and then back to the start scene. Now, one thing I'm not doing is we're not resetting the score. We should do that also in the start scene. So you can see when I start, my score is already up to here. So let's save this. We're going to load the start scene, and in the title screen input, we're also going to reset the score. So let's do another. We're going to copy this set int value. We'll go copy. I'll paste the action before here, and we're going to change this to the score int value, and we're just going to set it to 0. So all we're doing is setting the score int, the global variable, to 0 as soon as you start the start screen. So we'll save that, and let's test it out. I'll hit A to start. So let's make some score here. So I have 600, and actually when you run into these guys you get score, but that's fine. So one more life. Okay, so the next time I die it should be somewhere around 3100. So it looked like it went to 3200 there. So when I hit A now it should go to 0. Oh, I accidentally hit B. Yeah, it doesn't like it much when you hit B while you're playing Unity because it doesn't actually want to exit the application. So let's do that again. Yeah, my finger just slipped and I hit B instead. So let's go ahead and die here. All right, so I have about 5200. If I hit A, now my score is set back to 0. My lives are set to 3. All right, so everything seems to be working just fine. So I'm going to save this, and that's it for this one. I think what we'll do the next time is maybe we'll add some sounds to things. So when you shoot and when things blow up, we'll add some sounds for that. All right, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.